So it is important to kind of constantly refresh our energies, feel positive, bring in the positive energies into a system. Otherwise, this will become a perpetual state. What this negative mindset and negative mental attitude also does to us is that it kind of brings in us a compulsive kind of thinking. Our life suddenly becomes instinctive. We are actually guided by that compulsiveness. So somebody tells us something, we react immediately. Actually, the human system has this tremendous capability to generate different kinds of situations or different kinds of reactions to everything that happens in our lives. But because of the way we have programmed ourselves, because the way we constantly think about things and we kind of get upset and we kind of run those thoughts multiple times in our heads, we actually program our instinctive reactions. So we actually can choose to be in that compulsive state, or we can do something to raise our consciousness and awareness to a higher level, and where the awareness itself generates a light to kind of inform all of actions. And when this mechanical state becomes a natural state, we stop thinking. We stop thinking about our actions, and the instinctive life kind of rules our actions. And there is this interesting aside, and I'll just tell you this story. There was some afforestation program that was going on somewhere, and there were two gentlemen who were doing a set of activities. One guy was actually digging the pit, and the other guy was actually taking the mud out and throwing it. So the other person was actually watching from a distance and wondering what is happening. So after some time, this activity was going on for some time. After some time, he went closer and asked these people, what exactly is happening? So this guy said, I am supposed to dig the pit. The second person who's not come today, he's supposed to plant the sapling. And the third person is actually supposed to remove the extra mud. So the second person hadn't come in, but those two were actually behaving the way he should have behaved had the second person coming. So when our life assumes a certain kind of a compulsiveness and an instinctiveness, we stop thinking about what we are doing. Now, let's understand some of the deep psychological imprints that kind of make us react in a particular way. Why do we become so compulsive at times? Why do we let guided? Why do we let our reactions get guided by our thought world? The understanding is very simple. It's because of the fact that when we create this whirlpool of emotions in our head, and over the years, from childhood, when we grow, we develop different kinds of associations, start meeting different kinds of people. What typically happens is that we form a lot of associations, we form our worldviews, we form our impressions, and these worldviews and impressions actually dictate where we want to go, the kind of music we want to listen, the kind of food we want to eat, the kind of conversations we want to have, the kind of people we want to hang around with, the kind of gadgets we want to own. And these slowly, when these thoughts and impressions get ingrained in our mind and system, we start building very clear demarcated zones or comfort zones. This is what we call the conditioned mindset. And from this mindset, what happens is that we start creating our own world of desires. Now, we have a free will. Obviously, we have our material aspirations, material ambitions. Desires are a very natural constituent of evolution. Desires will happen. But when that desires are not harnessed, or when those desires are not controlled or channelized, what typically happens is we create a situation for ourselves. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's a beautiful example, analogy of how desire and anger combine. Because when desires don't happen in our lives, desires don't materialize in our lives, what typically happens is that it results in giving us anger. And when anger happens, I'll quickly read out this shloka. It's a beautiful shloka. It actually is a larger shloka. I've taken a small part of it. It says, Kama Krodha Vijayate, which means that when desire is obstructed, we get Krodha, which is anger. क्रोधा भवति सम्मोहस, which means क्रोध हमको सम्मोहित कर देता है, which means that क्रोध actually deludes us, which means that when we get deluded, we lose the power of judgment. Our power of judgment is clouded. Sammohas priti vibramaha, which means when we are deluded, it actually it actually affects our memory. When anger happens, we suddenly lose control of who we are, where we are, our pedigree, who we are speaking to. We lose sight of the complete situation. And then it says, Smriti Vanshat Buddhi Nasha, which means when a memory is destroyed, we actually destroy our intellect. And that is the pathway to moral degradation. So when we understand these situations, understand these thoughts, understand this principle, it gives us a better bandwidth, gives us a better framework to kind of regulate our reactions. A very incident, an important incident, a noteworthy incident that happened about, I think, 10 years back, which is to kind of illustrate to you what anger does to us. You remember this, the king of Nepal, his prince, he wanted to get married to somebody, and there was a bit of a problem with the alliance, and the queen mother especially was not happy, and so there was the matter was kind of brewing for some time. And in a dinner table conversation one day, there was this altercation that happened, and prince didn't like it. So the king said, why don't you retire right now? We'll resume the discussion once again, and maybe tomorrow. The prince actually went back to his bedroom and came back with two loaded pistols, and in one shot of rage and anger, he finished the 8-member royal family. So that's what anger can do to us. We counter situations during road rage. What typically happens? It's because of the compulsive mind state. When we are agitated, one small stimulus activates that anger in us, and we lose control of who we are. We lose control of the pedigree. We don't know what situation is. And after a couple of hours, we realize, oh my God, what happened? Why did I react like that? But by the time it's already delayed, we've actually thrown out a negativity into the universe. About the danger of the thought world and how it kind of creates an impression in a mind, Swami Vivekananda says he's actually extensively spoken about the importance of, kind of guarding our thoughts. He says, sorry, he says, we are what our thoughts have made us. So take care of what you think. Words are secondary, thoughts travel far. Each thought we think is tinged with our own character. Every vicious thought will rebound. Every thought of hatred which you may have thought is stored up. Sorry. Yeah. If you project hatred and jealousy, they will rebound on you with compound interest. No power can avert them. When once you have put them in motion, you will have to bear them. Remembering this will prevent you from doing wicked things. Each thought is a little hammer blow on the lump of iron which our bodies are, manufacturing out of which what we want it to be. Now, uh, we have to understand when we get a framework which tells us that, this perpetuating a kind of thinking is affecting our thought world, and it tends to affect our reactions, and it tends to make us instinctive in our behavior. uh, if we stop identifying with our thought world, then what happens is that we are no longer a slave to our thoughts. Otherwise, we'll be forever a slave to our thoughts, which also means that all of us need a bit of the reorganization of our mind, because we have the option of making our mind a kingdom of heaven, or we can make our mind a living hell. So if we are very, very serious about achieving our goals, we're serious about achieving our ambitions, aspirations, and life goals, we have to take care of the mind and do a few things to take our mind to the next level. So I'll give you one quick story. Sri Ramakrishna used to talk about this story. There was this, woodcutter who was cutting wood in the forest, and he had a tired day. And one day he was, he suddenly had a wish to relax. So he said, I wish I could get some shelter under a tree. So he took some shelter under a tree. It was actually the wish fulfilling tree, what we call the Kalpavriksha. He took some shelter there, and suddenly he thought, I wish I could get a glass of water. And then suddenly a glass of water appeared. Then he thought, wow, I'm now, the thirst has been met. How I wish I could get a beautiful plate of food right now. And suddenly from nowhere, a plate of food comes. And then he says, now I'm satiated. Now hunger is gone. How I wish I could, have a good afternoon's sleep. Then suddenly out of nowhere, a bed comes. So this man, his woodcutter, is like absolutely surprised. What's happening? And then he said, now I will enjoy a good afternoon sleep. Now I just wish somebody could come and massage my feet. My feet are aching. So immediately few maids come and then start massaging him. Just at that very point of time, evil thought comes into his head, and he thinks, what if a tiger comes and eats me right now? And just at that very moment, a tiger comes and devours him. So basically, what the story tells us is, our mind is a metaphor of a wish fulfilling tree. Whatever we give our mind, if we're giving it positive thoughts constantly, if we're giving our minds positive affirmations, all those positive affirmations will come true. If we give our minds negative affirmations, once again, those negative affirmations will come true.
Rajiv Ranjan has
Yeah.
asked that, is it best that a person does not get angry then?
Oh yes, absolutely. Anger actually, puts back negativity into your system, because the more you get angry, that if anger becomes a habit, that will go into your system, and that will become a habit and an impression. And the more you kind of repeat that habit, more you perpetuate that habit, it will take hold of you, and you will not be able to control yourself. And not only that, when you get angry, you do not only kind of create a negative situation for your own internal self, but in a family situation or in a corporate situation, that negativity spreads to others. So it kind of reshapes the entire atmosphere.
Thanks, Arijit. In case anybody else has any questions, please do feel free to put it on the chat window.
Yes.
Uh,
So if any other questions, anything that you finding difficult to understand, we could kind of quickly take a couple of minutes to talk about it.
Parijit, sometimes, a question is asked,
Yeah.
in organizations.
Yeah.
If I don't get angry, how will somebody else take it seriously, or how will
Yeah.
it work, right? I
Yeah.
think it'll be good to hear from you directly,
Yeah.
an answer to these kind of questions, because all of us are senior executives, and sometimes that thought does come into mind.
Correct. It's a extremely important question, and this question has come in our lives multiple times. So the way to do it is that in the corporate sphere, obviously your reactions will have to kind of be different, in the sense that you might not be angry within, but you have to be angry outside, which means that internally you will not get angry, but to kind of demonstrate to the subordinates or the team, you have to kind of tell them that this is not the right way to work. So also Sri Ramakrishnan said that you don't need to bite, but you can hiss, which means that you need to tell people that this is wrong. A wrong has to be very unequivocally mentioned. But at the same time, if we develop the maturity not to get our internal system ravaged by that anger, once you develop the orientation, this practice becomes a reality, where in the corporate sphere, we are actually, because we need to make people understand of their follies, we need to act in a particular way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree to it as well.
Great.
Thanks, Vinay. Thanks, Arijit. We have a few more questions that have come
Yeah.
up.
Yes.
There's one which says anger is a way of venting the stress,
Hmm.
and if you suppress it, it may affect your health. So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So the Western philosophy says this, that suppression of anger leads to suppression of anger leads to thoughts bottling up inside. And if we give vent to anger, in the Western side, a lot of things, somebody tells you that keep a voodoo doll and try to hit the voodoo doll, the anger will be out of your system. But when this thing happens, what happens is that we are creating more problems for ourselves. But anger, to kind of prevent anger from happening, is we need to kind of channelize our anger. So you're absolutely right in saying that anger cannot be controlled. It has to be channelized. It has to be redirected. That is what my next part of the presentation will talk about, which is that if we try to solve these problems by suppressing it actually will create psychological bottlenecks. We will not be able to solve our problems. That is why what your question is very, very relevant. It has to be redirected by a particular reorientation of our lifestyle, a reorientation of the kind of framework we use to lead our lives today. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and Arijit, if I may add, if you may allow, I
Yeah,
asked this question
yeah, yeah,
to, I think,
yeah,
Sadhguru or to Sister Shivani, I don't
yeah,
remember. And she
yeah,
gave me a very profound answer. She's saying,
yeah,
let's assume don't suppress your anger and you vent it out.
yeah,
And I vent it out, let's say, on whoever is in front of me.
yeah,
Then she said, every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
yeah,
You have vent out the anger, that person will vent out anger at level 5 if you vent it out at level 3. And then you will be
100%.
now venting at a level 7. She says you are
Yes,
going to get into a spiral of next level of anger now, right? So which is very,
absolutely.
very profound to be understood as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, and even more profound is when you answer why these things are happening, which is a complete different discussion. Is
Yeah.
that everything that happens in our lives is due to our karma and past karma. So that is a second level of understanding, but that's not the discussion here. But yeah, you're absolutely right that if you're giving into a particular reaction, you create a vicious cycle, and that cycle it's going to be very difficult to stop that cycle.
Thank you.
So, coming to wanting to stop the
Yeah,
cycle,
sure.
there's a
Yeah.
question that, from Jayaprakash,
Yeah.
how do you reorganize your mind, I mean, working towards
Yes,
de-stressing?
I will get to that. I will get to that.
All right, sure. So
There
we'll
are
take that up.
there are a lot of things. The next part of the presentation we did deal with what is the change in thinking that is required, and then we will go to the next steps. So can I not answer you right now and wait for the next part of the presentation? Is that okay?
Yes, I'm sure we can take that up later as well. So in case
Okay.
you want to continue with the presentation, we can come back to these questions later on as well.